What is up, everybody? Matt Modai here to give you some WNBA bangers for tomorrow's WNBA betting slate. So we're talking about tomorrow, Wednesday, July 17th. As of right now, I have two official bets to lock in that I have locked in myself and that I gave out on my Dub Club, while one lean as well. Well, we're just waiting odds to populate for the lean. If that ends up being upgraded to an official play, I will post that on Twitter and to my Dub Club. But of course, before we can get into tomorrow's picks, I do have to do a recap, and I don't have a recap from Tuesday's video to give you guys yet. I'm recording this before the Tuesday games have finished. So everything heading into Tuesday, we are up a little bit over 2.5 units. So hopefully Tuesday goes well. Hopefully the picks in this video go well. Of course, I'll update my record to reflect everything once these games have finished and all that stuff if you're ever interested. But as of right now, up over 2.5 units is fine. And then before we can get into those bangers, as I mentioned, I do appreciate it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are not already. And then for this video, like, comment, all that good stuff. Check out the Dub Club if you're interested. Let's get into these bangers. So we got two games on tap for tomorrow. Again, I'm going to have two official bets with one lean. Starting in the Dream versus Lynx game, I'm taking that game to go under 152.5 minus 110 odds at DraftKings. 152.5 admittedly is a pretty low total, but it's a pretty low total for a good reason. The books know what they're doing pricing this low. And even at 152.5, we're actually getting a pretty good price here. Again, at the time of this recording, every other book is below this number, with even some all the way down to 151. So here's hoping this ends up still being a positive CLV bet as the day goes on tonight and tomorrow. But looking at this matchup here, two brutal offenses, just brutal offenses, and then one minorly good defense in the Lynx. Now, the Lynx defense has really taken a step back recently. There was a point where they were like the best defense by far in the WNBA. Technically, they still have the best defensive net rating in the WNBA, but you look at their last 7 games, they're not as good as they were. Now, they're still an above average to good defense, but they're not in the great category that they were before. Now, the real reason why we're on this under, though, is both of these offenses, I just have a hard time seeing both of them being able to score a lot. Looking at the Lynx, Napheesa Collier is out for this game. That definitely hurts them more so on the offensive end than the defensive end. So it does make sense why they have been struggling so much on offense, as she's been banged up recently. You look at like the on-off splits for every single player on the Lynx, and with her on the court, the Lynx have the second best net rating of all of the players. So of all the the on-off court net rating, she has the second best of all players on the Lynx. And that net rating is very close to the player who is number one. I'm guessing they played the majority of their minutes together, but regardless, the player that is number one, that net rating would put them with the Storm as the 4th best offense in the WNBA. So not among the best, but still a pretty good offense when she is on the floor. When she's off the floor, that offensive rating plummets to 94.2. And to put that 94.2 offensive net rating into context for you guys, that would be the second worst offense in the entire WNBA. So basically what I'm saying is that with her off the court, the Lynx have the equivalent of the second worst offense in the entire WNBA. Guess what the one team is that's worse than them? That would be the Atlanta Dream, who have the worst offense in the WNBA by a mile. Now we're going to get into the Dream a little bit later. I just want to stick on the Lynx for a second, especially with Collier out. So with her off the court, I mentioned she has the second best offensive net rating for the team. With her off the court, the Lynx have the lowest effective field goal percentage of all the players on the team and the second lowest true shooting percentage. And the Lynx in general play at a slow pace, but they play even slower with her off the court. Granted, it's slightly slower, still slower overall, and they have played even slower recently than they have on the season. Like if you look at their pace in the last 7 games, it's below the pace that they have played out if you average out the entire season. Pace is very, very important when it comes to points scored, more so than offensive, defensive net rating, more so than anything. Pace contributes to points the most. So a slow pace equals not a lot of points scored, which is another reason why I like this under. And then you look at the Dream. They don't play at a super slow pace. They're not fast either. They're completely average. Like you look at their pace, completely average. You also look at the last 7 games. These are the 2 worst offenses in the WNBA according to offensive net rating. The Dream being the worst, the Lynx being the second worst. If you want to look at effective field goal percentage, the Lynx are the 3rd worst with the Dream as the 2nd worst. And it's the same order for true shooting, which just means that like effective field goal percentage, true shooting puts more emphasis on 3-pointers, and then with true shooting with free throws and stuff like that. All this is telling you two bad offenses that can't shoot One team that plays slow, and another in the Lynx, who also have a pretty good defense. All in all, it's tough to see a lot of points scored. And then talking about the Lynx defense, they still over the last 7 games, even as they have struggled, are allowing the 3rd lowest effective field goal percentage over the last 7 games. So really I have a hard time seeing the dream score really at all. While I also think that the Lynx offense is worth fading. So that's what I'm going with here, the under. That's our first official play. Next up, we are heading to the Wings versus Fever game, the second game on the schedule. And our official play in this game is I'm taking Caitlin Clark to go over 20.5 points. This is at -114 odds at FanDuel. I will admit, it's always square when you take a Caitlin Clark prop over in really any capacity. Any prop you want to take of hers is going to be nuked to high hell because she's the most popular player in the WNBA. But in cases like this, it's at least still a good play tonight, specifically when you dig into the matchup, and then we also get the benefit of fading recent results as well. The matchup here is just picture perfect for Caitlin Clark. The Wings defense, not only are they horrible in general, they're just a bad defense, but they're horrible specifically in the ways that Caitlin Clark loves to score, which we'll get into that in a second. But first, I just want to talk about the defense for the Wings. Last 7 games, worst defense in the the WNBA, according to defensive net rating, while they're also allowing the worst, which means the highest, opponent effective field goal percentage as well, which means that they just really can't cover anybody. So they're already a bad defense overall, but as I mentioned, they're bad in which the ways Caitlin Clark scores. Number 1, Caitlin Clark scores the majority of her points as the pick and roll ball handler. The Wings literally allow the most points in the entire WNBA to pick and roll ball handlers. This is per Props Madness. Caitlin Clark scores about 27% of her points via the pick and roll. The Wings, like I said, the worst defense covering pick and rolls. From there, Caitlin Clark scores the second majority of her points coming via free throws at the free throw line, getting fouled and getting to the line. About 20% of her points come at the line. The Wings, on the season, they're allowing the second most free throw points in the WNBA, meaning they're allowing the second most points via free throws. And they've still been bad recently. You look at the last 7 games, they're fouling at the second highest rate in the WNBA. Only the Mercury are fouling more than the Wings over the last 7 games. And then in the last real majority, important part in which Caitlin Clark scores, via transition. 16 of Caitlin Clark's points come via transition. The Wings have the worst transition defense in the WNBA on the season, and still the worst recently as well. They've allowed the most transition points on the season. Over the last 7 games, they have allowed the most fast break points in the WNBA. They really don't do any of the things well that Caitlin Clark likes to score, except for, I will admit, they do a pretty good job stopping above the break 3-pointers. They don't allow a ton of above the break 3-point attempts. Granted, they do allow a lot of wide open above the break 3-pointers, so teams shoot well against them. But they, like I said, they don't allow a ton of just raw attempts, but the attempts that they do allow go in because they don't do a great job guarding players and stopping shooters. So a lot of times they're wide open. And the scariest thing, people are going to look at this and say, well, she's only gone over once in her past 10 games. Why are you betting it? It's because we love, for those of you that did follow the NBA season, what we love to do here is fade recent results. Look for players that are in a little bit of a slump and bet them to come out of that slump. It worked wonders in the NBA when we were up over 100 units. The WNBA has been more hit or miss recently. But it's not that she's gone under in her last 10 games, but just look, she's come close in the majority of those games. Like her last 10 games, the fact that she's gone under 20.5 in 9 of those 10 games, she's averaging 18 points per game. She's consistently getting very close to cashing this over. One game, she ended exactly 20 points. Then she had a game with 19 points, 18 points. She scored 17 points twice. Like she's getting really, really close to the 21-point number that we need her to get to cash this over. And while she's not doing that recently, I do think that there is the opportunity where she has a blow-up game because of the matchup. And just in general, this matchup will hopefully should allow her to score more than her season average, more than her average in the last 10 games. So I really like this play. Let's hope she comes through for us. And then in terms of the lean, it's Arike Ogunbowale over 19.5 points. Right now, this is only offered at a Canadian book. Bet-A-No is what it's called. It's the only prop book that's currently offering this prop. Hopefully when it comes out, it still comes out at 19.5 or comes out at 20.5 at a reasonable number. I would probably take it anything 20.5 or lower. So we'll need to wait on that. But this is similar to Caitlin Clark. Phenomenal matchup for Arike Ogunbowale to score a bunch of points. And we also get the benefit of fading recent results here as well. And even more aggressively with Ogunbowale. it's kind of crazy. Like, you look at this season and she looks like she's been incredibly consistent, which she has. She's gone over 19 and a half points in 7 of 23 games. 17, that's an important number. She's gone over 19 and a half points in 17 of 23 games. That's incredible. That's a really good hit rate. 4 of those 6 unders have happened in the last 4 games. She has gone under this number in 4 straight games. So another way of saying that is that she has gone over, or she went over in 17 of her first 19 games before heading into this 4-game stretch. In these last 4 games, she scored 19, 13, 13, and 12 points. So by far her worst stretch of the year. It's not even close. Also, in another good matchup against the bad defense against the Fever, a great opportunity to fade recent results and bet on her to finally have a good game after this horrible, horrible stretch. Now is the time to buy in on her point prop. Now, her 3-point prop is a good look as well if you wanted to take that. Normally, it's priced at 2.5, and it's heavily juiced to the gills towards the over, so you don't always get a great price. But if you look at her recent struggles scoring, you could almost directly attribute that to her not being able to make 3-pointers. Her last 4, her last 4 games, 1 of 7, 2 of 6, 2 of 8, 2 of 9 from deep. She's been shooting really, really poorly. And in a couple of the games she went under, if she just makes a couple more 3-pointers, she's going over her point prop. So obviously 3-pointers lead to points, so that all makes sense. And you head into this 4-game stretch, and she was on fire. She had gone over 19 and a half points in 5 straight games, and she had gone over, like I said, 17 of 19 games heading into this 4-game stretch. So the fact that she's played poorly in 4 games, not shot well in 4 games, now has a really, really good matchup against the Fever is why I like this over. Agumbawale, despite her recent struggles, she's one of the best volume 3-point shooters in the WNBA, especially above the break. And the Fever do not do a good job guarding the 3-point line and guarding above the break 3-pointers. They've given up the third most points to above the break 3-pointers in the WNBA. You look at the last 7 games, they literally allowed the most above the break 3-pointers. So you want to take her 3-point prop, you want to take her regular point prop, whatever you want to do. I think there's really no way you can back her and it goes poorly, in my opinion. Points and 3-pointers, I should say. But that's all we got. So 2 official bangers for you guys to lock in with 1 lean. I appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate everybody for watching once again, and have a good one.